Well, after you're elected, you fill out a disclosure report saying what your holdings are. I did that, but because I wanted to be careful about any conflict of interest, I started to talk to the ethics people about moving everything into a blind trust. In the process of doing that, I wanted to sell all my individual holdings. So at the end of 2018 and 2019, all my individual holdings were sold and moved into mutuals, but that's just too much detail. After every sale, you're supposed to fill out another small form. It's the Stock Act. I believe in the Stock Act. I'm a strong supporter of the Stock Act. I missed those deadlines. And, but it wasn't as if I was doing the opposite of insider trading. I was getting rid of any conflict of interest in the process, but I absolutely missed those deadlines and I apologize for them. It was my mistake and I take full responsibility.
So again, just so we're clear, I think there were, as we were discussing, I think there's maybe 8 or so transactions that you did each time you sold a block of stocks to try to divest yourself of it so there wouldn't be a conflict. Each time you sold off a block of stocks, you're supposed to report that within a 30 or 45-day window so that the public can see that you're trading or moving stocks. And you failed to do that. Was it because you were aware of the law or not aware of the law? I mean, why didn't you file the forms that you were supposed to?
Selling the entire portfolio. Look, I knew what the law was. I missed the deadlines and I have to take responsibility, personal responsibility for doing that. No one else is responsible except for me. And now I can file all of that, but it's not, I did file my disclosure report so everybody knew what my holdings are. They didn't know I was unloading the entire portfolio so I could put everything in mutuals and ETFs, basically to avoid any conflict of interest.
Obviously, this is an issue where it's a violation of federal law. It could result in a misdemeanor, or it could also result in a complaint filed with the House Ethics Committee. Where do you see this going from here, and what do you think is the appropriate action that should be taken with regard to you?
Well, actually, I notified the Ethics Committee once I realized that I hadn't, and I need to get the paperwork done. I'll get it done immediately, and then I'll talk to the Ethics Committee about what they think is appropriate. Whatever they think is appropriate, I obviously, whether it's a financial penalty or anything else, but it's my responsibility, and I take full responsibility for this, and I'm really sorry that I missed those deadlines in the process of trying to do the right thing, trying to totally avoid conflict of interest.
Right, because you held these stocks, you had these stocks prior to your coming into Congress, and once you were elected, you wanted to divest yourself of these stocks so that nobody could say that you were using your position to benefit the companies whose stocks you hold.
Exactly.
Right. All right, so this came up in part because you had just recently been appointed by Nancy Pelosi to an oversight committee that's going to be examining exactly how the federal government spends its money when it comes to the coronavirus, the billions and billions, trillions of dollars actually that the U.S. government is spending. I do want to ask you about what your vision for that committee is, but I guess I have to also ask, whether or not you think that this action should in any way disqualify you from serving on that committee.
I don't think so. We're looking at how the Secretary of the Treasury and the Fed gave out billions of dollars to bail out companies, including the airlines. American Airlines obviously is one of the airlines here, and the airlines are in terrible trouble. What are the standards? What are the restrictions? Are they protecting the workers in the process? The only thing, there's not much in the law that puts constraints on it other than stock buybacks. So I want to know what the companies are, who they are that have applied. Here's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about fraud. I'm worried about mischief. And I'm obviously worried about, did these companies simply take the money and leverage it for more money? I mean, we have some tough questions to ask in the process of doing oversight.
What authorities do you have? I mean, will you have subpoena power? This, as my understanding, this committee, although it's a part of Congress, does not have individual subpoena power as a committee, correct?
It doesn't have subpoena power, much like the TARP committee. And I talked yesterday with Elizabeth Warren. You know, you just have to use public exposure, shame, but more importantly, you have to demand transparency. And you have to ask very specific questions and get very specific answers. What you can do is have hearings. And you can bring the companies that asked for the money, that got the money before the commission. You certainly can bring the heads of the Fed and the Secretary of the Treasury before the commission and ask them detailed questions about how they gave out the money and to whom, and what were the standards, what were the restrictions, and what were the paybacks that were put in place.